reducing from the root the number or the size of the flood that reaches the courts. And that is a philosophical difference in what we call addressing violence, in that the aim should be to get the roots of these plans down to the point where you have a court system that can manage. What you're hearing here is that we don't have the capacity. What you might not hear is that you will never ever have the capacity, because the more you plan for the tertiary level is the
Yes.
more the root will be feeding
Yes.
the problems there.
We're coming up to the break, and I really want to get the matter of the trust deficit that now exists between the police and citizens. Will a police reform program help to fix this?
Yes and no. Remember, the trust problem here is a cultural one. If people may not be aware, but go to any other country, Jamaicans are among the top 5 informants in the world. So in other words, there's a lot of stuff to fix, and police reform is one of them. But the relationship and the constant relationship between police officers and citizens, right, whether they're innocent or guilty, must also be addressed. So in other words, a lot of social marketing also needs to be done with the people, because if you fix one end of it, which is constant police reforms, which we welcome, it doesn't really work all by itself when there are citizens begging police officers to shoot somebody.
Okay. ACP, what will help to fix this matter of the trust deficit?
We talk about trust, but remember, it's not only trust between police and citizens. We live in a very low trust society. So there's mistrust of every system and almost everybody in Jamaica.
Except that the police seem to be topping the list.
I don't know that we have done that research, but and I wouldn't be unwilling to accept
I can
what
tell
you
you
said.
I can tell you the army is the most trusted.
I wouldn't be unwilling to accept what you said. But because remember, the police is seen as that guard, that buffer between everybody else and what is right. So what is wrong and what is right. So that put the police in interface with the public, whether or not the people are right or they're wrong. That is going to erode the trust between, because if a police does something wrong, it's going to impact more than one person.
How do we fix it?
More than one. Well, it's going to require great leadership. Leadership not at only the police level, but at all level of society. So it's going to be in the home, the church, the schools. The value system will have to change. You know, Jamaica is a country of hustlers. We have many hustlers. People just go about hustling for survival, which is necessary to keep them from day to day. The police interrupts that every day. There can't be trust between those hustlers and the police, because you're stopping a man from eating a food.
Well, here's one citizen who wants to play a part. Rob Black asks, what kind of incentives are we offering to whistleblowers? Is there? Who wants to take that? ACP?
We offer incentive, but not, I would say not enough. Not enough meaningful with some incentives, because we have what is called a witness protection program. And people are relocated. They are given a start over in life, you know, if you cooperate. But it's really not enough. Yeah. Again, we come back to resources. It's a matter of resources. It's a matter of trusting the system.
There's also a question coming in respect of corrupt police officers, but let's take John Rambo Campbell first. He says, to be honest, to curb this crime monster, we must have to give up some of our democratic rights as a citizen. It's very sad, however, that if there is nothing to hide, we should have no worries. But to the matter now of corrupt police officers, it's a question that Rob Black also asked. What's being done to deal with corrupt police officers?
I don't think there's any institution in Jamaica that is more policed than the police force. There's no institution that polices its own like the police force. There's no police institution that see members, its own members, taking action against other members of the organization, like the police force. We arrest scores of policemen each year once we find them out. But remember this, and I want all of us to remember, the policeman more often than not is corrupt because there is somebody else involved with him. And more often than not is not a police. And I am not suggesting that this is correct. What I am suggesting that we have a bigger problem than the police problem.
What do you make of that?
All right, I wanted to comment on the fact that all the research we've done shows that there are actually police officers in Jamaica who are killed just on the grounds of being the face of the state. In other words, quite often when people lash out against the police, they actually don't see the police, they just see the representative of the state. And we do have an oppressive state, a state that treats youth with some amount of difference. I mean, and this is not just Jamaica, it's a common problem around the Caribbean. When resources are for youth, it looks like something squeezed up in a corner. When it is for persons of a particular clan and color, it looks fabulous. And people actually get in a visual manner that this is a state that does not treat the most active and the people with the highest level of dynamism, the highest level of warrior genes, and the highest level of aggression, the people who are most active, 15 to 34, they are treated with some degree of deference. And that will push people to attack the police and to treat them with some sort of difference.
Thank you so much. We will take a break. When we come back, we turn the spotlight on Western Jamaica. One deputy superintendent says the city of Montego Bay is just as safe as anywhere else. When we come back.
This is Crime Stop. How may I help?
You know them bury some illegal gun, but me no want them know say I'm me talk.
Don't worry, sir. Crime Stop is privately funded and run by the PSOJ. Everything reported here is anonymous. It's just like you're invisible.
What about the reward?
We provide cash rewards for information that leads to an arrest or recovery. We'll stash the cash wherever you like, so nobody will ever find out.
Alright, me tell you.
Be an invisible hero. Make the call. Crime Stop 311. Solving crime pays.
Wherever in the world we are, Jamaica is with us. In our hearts, in the way we talk, in the way we walk. In the Gleaner. Access Jamaican news anytime, anywhere, on your smartphone, tablet or computer. Stay on top of what I want by reading today. Stay informed with your #1 Jamaican news source, The Gleaner. Become a digital subscriber today at www.jamaica-gleaner.com. Anytime, anywhere.
Action. Free up your life, free up your life. Get flow alive. Rhythm don't stop, we a vibe it up. Music nice for me, I turn it up. Get these a data free. These a data free. But boy, that's not all. $2.99 per minute for your call. In a house, in a car, anywhere you're there at all. Free up your life, free up your life. Get flow alive. Free up your life, free up your life. Get flow alive.
We had a perfect love story, but everything changed. We start getting angry for the simplest things. I knew it wasn't healthy, but I loved him. It's only when I ended up in the hospital I realized that I had to make a choice. Him or me. I chose me. I called the police and they helped me.
If you're a victim of domestic abuse, get help. Call your nearest police station. A message from the Ministry of National Security.
We are placed at such a unique place in the world that we can make a difference.
People want to see tough measures on crime, and people would exemplify tough measures to be hanging, a state of emergency. We have tried those before, and we have gotten into problems.
You can't catch Quack, you catch him short.
Maybe I turn up because young boy them left from school and not with that and deal with them scamming and them mafia business in a partial. Right now I'm afraid I'm up here.
Seeing people dying left, right and center, making your efforts seem as though, you know, they are nothing.
I'm living with a smile, but there's a scar behind it. Nobody wanna know me I feel.
Whole community feel mashed up.
The police is not here to stop crime. The police is here to catch the criminal who commit the crime. Who is it that must stop the crime? You or me?
This is Light on Violence, a special Gleaner forum on crime. Watch the live stream at facebook.com/GleanerJamaica and at jamaica-gleaner.com. You may also join in the discussion on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter using the hashtag #LightOnViolence.
Thank you for staying with us. I'm Damian Mitchell. This is Light on Violence, a special Gleaner forum on crime. We have with us the Assistant Commissioner of Police in charge of the crime portfolio, Elian Powell, Maxine Jackson, a Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, and Dr. Herbert Gale, an anthropologist, as well as a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, Mona. We did offer an invitation to the National Security Minister, who said he was not able to be here. Neither was Colonel Charles, the State Minister in the ministry, as well as the opposition spokesman on national security, Peter Bunting. We're turning the focus now on Western Jamaica, particularly St. James, which has been a hotbed of criminal activities. This has caused the National Security Minister, Robert Montague, to announce the raft of measures in Parliament last September. Let's listen. The National Security Minister took to the Parliament on September 28, announcing new measures for St. James, a joint police military operating center in Montego Bay, increased numbers of police and military personnel in the region, increased intelligence assets in the area of operation, and the serving of all warrants and summonses in the police stations within 2 weeks. Curfews have been imposed. Cordon and searches have been implemented. At the same time, the St. James Police Division is to be split in two. The anti-lottery scamming task force has been revived, and a telephone number set up for citizens to call in confidence to share what they know. Promoters of events with more than 1,000 patrons must have in place CCTV and metal detectors. 40 trained dogs are coming from Cuba to help in gun and drug detection, and 200 more JCF graduates are to be stationed in St. James by the end of December. Well, that was September 2016. On March 20, a Deputy Superintendent of Police in Area 1, Aisley MacArthur, was reported in the Gleaner as saying the western city of Montego Bay is just as safe as anywhere else in Jamaica. This is what he said. It's not a situation where persons are being randomly killed in the west, or it's a case where it's no longer safe to walk on the streets. We'll get the answer to that question as to whether that is in fact true in Montego Bay, St. James. But first of all, let's ask ACP just how many of those measures announced by the minister have been instituted.
Well, quite a number of them have been, and it's work in progress, so that work continues.
Is the split of the St. James Division still on?
It is still on. The difficulty is to find the appropriate place for the headquarters, and that work is going on. I'm sure that up to last week some meetings were held in a bid to identify an appropriate location.
So let me ask you then, ACP, is it a matter of perception or reality? Is Montego Bay really as safe as anywhere else in Jamaica?
Let me tell you, I wouldn't say it as was said by the youngster, because if you are a citizen of Montego Bay, you wouldn't find it to be as safe as anywhere else, especially if you are involved in wrongdoings, or you could have had relatives who are involved in wrongdoings. let me go on to explain what I mean by that. Most of we have very few arbitrary killings in St. James or even in Western Jamaica. Most of them, we found them to be real targeted. People came deliberately for the target, and what happened is that sometimes when you hear 4 or 5 deaths, they came from one person, and they're taking everybody when they're going, which is most unfortunate. But very few persons are just chosen at random and killed in St. James. We have hundreds of tourists coming into St. James almost on a daily basis. We don't see any attack on them. We know that they are safe to go around the place. So in some context, what the officer said was true. I don't know though that for the citizens there, they could say it as he did.
Well, I see that Dr. Gale is trying to come in on this matter as to whether St. James is as safe as anywhere else in Jamaica.
Right, because the St. James has a homicide rate of 101 per 100,000. That's 3 1/3 above the Civil War benchmark of 30 per 100,000. That is extreme violence. But then there are two sets of stuff we have to look at. Sense of safety, real safety, and differential distribution. So in other words, somebody may actually feel safe in an area that is unsafe because that person lives in an area of St. James that is unaffected by the problem, because violence in Jamaica is very structured. It's actually geolocated, so there are specific areas and people know. Let's look at, say, a city like Medallion City, where 91% of children has seen a dead body, right? That's because it's very small. When you come back to Jamaica, a lot of Jamaicans can carry on their merry way every day because they're not in a place as constricted as Medallion City, because less than 50% of Jamaicans have ever seen a dead body by murder. So one can say Montego Bay is safe and mean a lot of things, right? So the differential distribution is important. Nobody who lives in an area where people are dying and where they have to be lining their bath or removing their floors, because I have seen, right? People are now pulling out their board floors, and when the shots start to fire, they pull out the board, jump down into the foundation and call back the board. I mean, those persons cannot say that they feel safe. But persons who live in an area, all right, and the tourists who come to Montego Bay, those persons are safe.
Arthur Hall has a question from the audience. We'll take Arthur. Turn around your microphone. We'll take Arthur, and then we'll come to Ms. Jackson.
Just checking with ACP. ACP, the people in Montego Bay and in St. James said they know when the reprisals are going to happen. They know who committed the murders, and they know who will respond. But the police doesn't seem to know, so the police respond after the reprisal has taken place. Why the police moving that way?
Well, I wouldn't say that the police don't know, because a lot of times when a murder is committed, the best predictor of a future murder is a past murder. So when a murder is committed, we look at all the issues related to that murder, and we draw reasonable assumptions that the next victim could be this person. It could have, the next murder could happen in this place. So we do that a lot. However, I think that, you know, some of the lifestyles of some of our people have made them far more vulnerable. Some of the people heed advice to take precautions. Some of the people, you know, are so involved in getting the spoils that they make themselves vulnerable.
But ACP, what I don't understand is, my friends in Flankers know that somebody was killed in Flankers today, or somebody was killed in Rosite or Mount Salem, and they know that the shootings won't stop until somebody is killed back in the community that they think the killers were from.
Can I
Let's
tell
have
you
an
that
answer
there are
on
many buffer lines, but the amount of buffer lines that you would need to prevent some of these murders, we don't have the resources to do it. Because there are persons who are really just bent on revenge. And as I said, we do that analysis and we know where some of the victims could have been. And in many cases, we prevent many persons from dying.
Well, let me ask Ms. Jackson to come in here though, because I'd like to know just how heavy your caseload is in St. James compared with the rest of the island.
Well, St. James has a heavy caseload because in looking at the statistics from 2000 and Hillary term for 2014, we have a total of going across. We have a total of we disposed of 10 cases, but we have 53 cases initially for that period. New cases, we have 81. We have 13 new cases. We have for 2014, and 13 cases were traversed. However, in 2015, we see a significant leap. We have 81 cases, 46 new cases.
81 cases.
81 cases, and then 46 new cases. So that's a total of 131 cases.
Mr. Gale, I see you're nodding your head. Or
It's the point I was making, that every system has a carrying capacity. Again, I go back to what I have been pleading for in this country, that people go back to understanding the primary causes of violent crimes, right? Because if next year you have the 81 moves up to 100, and then it goes to 150, you've long passed your capacity to address, to prosecute. And I've seen countries go, and I won't even call the names of the countries because it's embarrassing, go to the extent of importing people to help to address the problem, rather than simply going back to basics of ensuring kids have food, kids go to school.
So then let's ask you then, Ms. Jackson, how difficult is it for the prosecutor in St. James?
It is a difficult task because, as I said, it's one of resource capacity. In St. James County, you only have one circuit court. So when a matter starts, then all other matters are pushed aside because there is only one circuit court. You can only try one matter at a time. So when we have this case that, as I indicated in 2015, where you have 81, this is 81 cases traversing from the previous circuit that will add on to the new cases of 46. So realistically, you cannot try more than 1 or 2 cases per week. And a circuit generally sits for 3 weeks. Sometimes with resource capabilities that are in place, when we make adjustments to our roster, we may have an extension of the circuit, but that requires us to be able to get the consent of all other players, because you're talking about judges have to be placed there as well to man the circuit. So that too is a problem. So it is in of itself a problem in terms of getting the matters off.
Well, just to say, it's much worse than the figures they are showing. Because just last year alone, the police cleared more than 100 murders in St. James.
And cleared means the person is arrested or killed.
And it's before. Well, none of those was killed. So those were before the court. So that would be 100 murder cases. We're not talking about shooting and other serious crimes. We're just talking about murder cases that will be added to whatever number Ms. Jackson spoke of.
So it's even worse than we may think.
That's right.
So another big problem though, ACP, is that Jamaicans don't know who are the criminals you're searching for. Kevin O'Brien Chang is asking, why is it there's not an app or some internet-based system where you can find profiles of the criminals you're looking for?
All right. President, as we speak, we're working with some agencies, and we are developing a very comprehensive list of all wanted persons. One of the things that I'd like to remind us, though, is that we can't have photographs of all wanted persons, because in many cases, we require identification parades. So if an identification parade is required, we can't put the photograph, but we can only give descriptions, and we have to be careful how much information we give because we don't want to compromise. Remember, justice is for all. So we have to be careful that even that man who is to be charged is entitled to justice.
Help us to understand what's the difference in England and the United States compared with Jamaica, where these systems are in place for a database where we can find the profiles of the killers who are being sought.
I don't think you're understanding entirely what I'm saying. I'm saying there are many instances where those files are complete, don't require any identification parade. Those can be displayed anywhere at any time. But there are many others, and even where we might have a person and we have completed files for that person, there may be other uncompleted files.
What's the timeline to
Are
this?
incompleted files.
What's
And for those, we might know that, listen, this person committed 10 murders, and we have statements and everything in 8. But there are 2 that will be required for identification parade. We can't put the faces out until after that identification parade.
What's the timeline we're looking towards to have this comprehensive list of wanted persons?
Between now and the end of the month, it should be finished. As a matter of fact, just Monday, we gave a list to each divisional headquarters. We gave them 50 copies of their wanted people, and those should be displayed at the post office in all the public
Except that
places.
people not going to post offices anymore, though,
No,
ACP.
no.
The problem
we
is...
have them on line 2, that's what I'm saying. We're putting them on line 2, but we're going to put them in the communities too. What we're going to do is we're going to have them as widely displayed as is humanly possible.
So what of Kevin O'Brien Chang's question? Why are we not having a database, a system, an app? There's Stay Alert app, there's Ananda app, there are so many others. Why are we not having a database, an app where we can find the profiles of the men you're looking for who are wreaking terror in places like St. James?
I said to you, by the end of this month, we will have that up and running.
Oh, so it's not just a comprehensive list, you will have a database.
We have a database and you can go on and you can search. We're working assiduously at that.
Oh, very
Our
well.
team has been put together and they're working assiduously at it.
Very well. And we'll be going to the audience for questions in just a while, but let me come to you just before then, Ms. Jackson. Is the matter of identity really presenting itself as a problem when matters reach the court?
No, because more than often than not, the police would have done extensive investigations in terms of having the witnesses, because there are certain requirements that the law requires in terms of identification. If the person knows the person only by an alias, certain things will have to be satisfied. For example, going to an identification parade, particularly where the person is not very familiar with the person before. So when the matters come before the court, we do not have a challenge in terms of identification because those are all well taken care of by the police.
Here's Shane Sterling on Facebook. He says, criminals are not afraid of the law or the justice system. Currently, the law is more afraid of the criminals. Until criminals are afraid of the law and the justice system, crime will never be under control. Your reaction, Dr. Gill?
We have to be very careful what we ask for, you know, because I said it at the very beginning that quite often when you work with police officers, right, as an anthropologist of social violence, I have to work on both sides of the fence. And quite interestingly, persons will tell you that the police are soft and the system is soft, right? But then when their cousin gets arrested, especially if the cousin gets arrested falsely, then they switch. So I think the point is that we have to get to a point where we begin to educate people, and this is what we're doing, educating people about what causes violence and how violence is really addressed. Otherwise, we're going to constantly have these emotional demands.
Yes. We can't leave Montego Bay without dealing with the matter of the lottery scamming. It is a prevalent problem that has been impacting the murder rate. Is there any end in sight in respect of the prevalence of the lottery scamming, ACP?
Well, it has continued for quite a long time. There have been quite a number. Again, the capacity of the court is impacting our ability to maybe deal effectively with that. What happens is that we have had quite a number of cases before the court, and the cases that Ms. Jackson spoke about are essentially murder cases. But we have hundreds of lottery scamming cases before the court. And these are not being resolved in a very timely way either. So people are not getting the punishment in very swiftly as is required. So people are not, the system is really not supporting the police work.
What then is the outcome? What then is the outlook? What should we expect?
We probably need, probably, and it has been discussed before, we probably need just a special court, a special circuit to deal exclusively with lottery scamming. And when we have that desired effect, then we could abandon that court. But in the short term, we probably need that court to resolve the issue.
Is that something the ODPP would endorse?
I would not necessarily say it's only for the lottery scam. It's important for the lottery scam as well, but for other courts, because we're in a technology age and crime has transcended our borders, and we have different types of crimes. We have the cyber crime, we have the anti-gang legislation, we have human trafficking crime. So we have a lot of crimes that's taken up the courtroom phase in terms of doing matters. So it's not only the lottery scam per se, but it is one of those courses that we would need. And of course, specialized courts would definitely assist in getting rid of some of the backlog that we faced within the courts.
Dr. Gale, you want to come in here?
It's not just the weight or the size of the hurricane that hits you, it's what it hits. Montego Bay has always been ranked as among the poorest people in Jamaica. When the Mexicans decided that they were going to now pass to Belize, the homicide rate in Belize was just 12 per 100,000. Nothing more than 12 per 100,000. And Belize, within 8 years of the decision to shift cocaine trade to the corridor, away from the Caribbean Sea, it did take Belize more than 8 years to make the top 5 most violent countries in the world. In other words, the point I'm making, until we begin to address the genuine plight of Montegonians, if scamming is removed, something, I can even give it a name, PAMIN, is going to replace it. Something will replace it, because we have to address the fundamental problems in Montego Bay. Montego Bay is treated as a satellite city. I mean, I've done enormous amounts of work there. A lot of the people who make money in Montego Bay immediately expatriate. The money just fly to another place, usually to Kingston or St. Andrew to be specific. Right?
Montego Bay, in fact, has had that history. There was pyramid scheme.
But it has always been in the top 5 poorest place in the country.
Yes. Let's take a question from the audience. Emma Lewis has a question.
Yes, good evening, everyone. How are we doing in terms of securing the ports and Jamaica's borders? That's my question.
I think most of our legitimate ports are pretty well covered. But there are so many other
illegitimate
points of entry, I would call it, that it's almost, it's extremely difficult to police the borders because of the many points of entry that you could have. And I think that with the acquisition of this new boat ship by the JDF, what we're seeing already is that there are more poachers being captured. And I'm sure if we continue relentlessly, we're going to find some of those who are carrying the guns and other contraband.
We're getting some support for you, Dr. Gale. Andre Williams on Facebook says the crime problem cannot be solved by policing alone. He's asking what kind of social intervention programs is the government putting in place to educate and empower young people? That's not a question that you can answer, but of course we're inviting people to continue to share your questions and your comments online using the hashtag #LightOnViolence on Facebook and Twitter. This is the Gleaner's Special Crime Forum being broadcast here from the Medallion Hall Hotel. We'll take a break, our final break, on Light on Violence.
This is Crime Stop. How may I help?
Me know them bury some illegal gun, but me not want them know say I'm me talk.
Don't worry, sir. Crime Stop is privately funded and run by the PSOJ. Everything reported here is anonymous. It's just like you're invisible.
What about the reward?
We provide cash rewards for information that leads to an arrest or recovery. We'll stash the cash wherever you like, so nobody will ever find out.
Alright, me tell you.
Be an invisible hero. Make the call. Crime Stop 311. Solving crime pays.
Wherever in the world we are, Jamaica is with us. In our hearts, in the way we talk, in the way we walk. In the Gleaner. Access Jamaican news anytime, anywhere, on your smartphone, tablet or computer. Stay on top of what I want by reading today. Stay informed with your #1 Jamaican news source, The Gleaner. Become a digital subscriber today at www.jamaica-gleaner.com. Anytime, anywhere.
We had a perfect love story, but everything changed. We start getting angry for the simplest things. I knew it wasn't healthy, but I loved him. It's only when I ended up in the hospital I realized that I had to make a choice. Him or me. I chose me. I called the police and they helped me.
If you're a victim of domestic abuse, get help. Call your nearest police station. A message from the Ministry of National Security.
It all starts with a choice, a reaction. Maybe it was something small that blew up. But don't you see? There's power in you. Power to control the things you do. You have the power to create a better tomorrow. But it starts with the choices you make today. What will you choose? Walk away. It's not worth it. Make the right choices today. Let's create a safer Jamaica.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
Action. Free up your life, free up your life. Get flow alive. Your links one shot, get free talk data on your WhatsApp. Vibes up me one shot. Free up your life, get flow alive from your app that lock. No need for hotspot, boy. That's not all. $2.99 per minute for your call. In a house, in a car, anywhere you're there at all. Free up your life, free up your life. Get flow alive. Free up your life, free up your life. Get flow alive.
This is Light on Violence, a special Gleaner forum on crime. Watch the live stream at facebook.com/GleanerJamaica and at jamaica-gleaner.com. You may also join in the discussion on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter using the hashtag #LightOnViolence.
Thank you very much for staying with us. This is Light on Violence, a special Gleaner forum on crime. We're going with a hashtag Light on Violence, and we are inviting you to post your questions, your comments on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Let's go to Twitter, where Jerry Scott is asking Dr. Gale to shed light on the inferences which can be drawn from the abuses on Hannah for her cartel-like comments on crime.
Sorry?
This is Jerry Scott. He says, Dr. Gale, shed light on inferences which can be drawn from the abuses on Hannah, that's Lisa Hannah, for her cartel comments linked to crime.
that sounds like a political issue. But the point is, though, that if we look at the situation with cartel and the production of music and all that's been going on, and you just listen to people on the streets, it tells you the kind of information we have in our head and how emotional we get about stuff. Because on one hand, there is the matter of music, of the assumption that music is being made behind bars. But I am always amazed at how much energy is placed on these tertiary things. The other day I asked a student to do a web check for me on how much time and effort we spend on tertiary issues versus primaries. And the primaries, I think the primaries accounted for 3%. That is why I remain steadfast on this matter, that we have to begin, and if we've begun as we have actually, we have to keep a trajectory that keeps people understanding what caused the problem in the first place. Because these things are tertiary.
Yes. One of the issues has to do with the victims of crime and the psyche, what's happening with them. Let's listen to one woman who has been suffering as a result of the murder of her 2 sons in Clarendon.
To tell you the truth, me feel like a mad woman in a clean clothes. Me just a walk all about and me see people come out and me just keep on a walk. Me couldn't cry because the way how me feel. Then when me really look and see a earth come pick up my 2 sons, the only thing me could have to do is scream. Me have to end up a doctor every day. Me have to take sleeping pill up till now. Me have to take sleeping pill. I'm living with a smile, but there's a scar behind it. Nobody wanna know me I feel.
That's powerful. She says she feels like a mad woman walking around in clean clothes. What's happening in the communities as a result of the intensity of crime?
There are two things that the security forces have to grapple with. Vendetta versus feud. The bigger problem is feud, which accounts for largely about 70% of reprisals. The other 30% is what we call vendetta, where a person goes on his own to take revenge. But here's the problem that people don't get. When there is a murder, when a murder is committed, and one of the first things we do is to check to see the age of the little brother, right? And also the frame around the daughter within that setting on the mother. Because sometimes I have seen mothers cry and we go to a vigil and everybody pray that there's no reprisal. And before the prayer is over, one person walks to the back. And before one of us, even a part of the research team, is able to find that person, we hear the shots. I mean, it's that close. In other words, quite often we see something happens and we don't understand how the trajectory of that. The 2 sets of trajectories that we have to look at. The physical, but also the damage to those 2 parts of the brain that I speak about quite often. The orbital cortex and the amygdala. The amygdala is our demand and reward center. The orbital cortex is our filter, our conscience. We have actually done the scans on people's brains when somebody in the family has been killed, especially the person who was responsible for us, or the person we are responsible for. The brain literally suppresses the orbital cortex to allow for the revenge. In other words, some persons will tell you that their bodies feel cooler after they have taken the revenge. Right? So let me take it right to your face that these are the kinds of stuff that we have to relate to. In other words, when we have a reprisal, right, or when there's a shooting, the kind of mop-up that needs to be done in a country with a homicide rate of 50 per 100,000, right? The world is 9.1, Jamaica is 50 per 100,000, okay? That's almost twice a Civil War benchmark. Imagine the resources needed when a person who is killed has a critical mass of 9 persons around him affected. And I'm giving you some averages. We've actually found every person killed has about 9 persons around him who can take revenge. You can see the confusion.
Ms. Jackson, one of the concerns then is that when the justice system, the courts in particular, is finished with the cases, the witnesses, the relatives are just spit out. There's no more love, so to speak, for them. Is there anything that can be done?
Well, certainly there is a victim support unit that has overall remit within the Ministry of Justice. And it's really the case that many victims and witnesses are given the support of the victim support unit. They follow them to court and right throughout the court proceedings at the end and beyond. You also have the the Justice Protection Program Act, which allows witnesses to be on the program, and they have them on the program for years, and then afterwards they're reintegrated into society by giving them places to live and monies to go with it. So it is really the case that many victims are secured under the witness support unit, and especially in the case of victims of sexual abuse. In the cases where persons are charged with murder and the victims come forward and their relatives, they too are given the support of the victim support unit. And they are accessible, it is all over the parishes, it is in the 14 parishes that they can go, and we also have community volunteers who help them as well to integrate into the society.
Is the restorative justice an answer to some of these concerns we're having at ACP?
It is. It is. It is an important aspect of the justice system, because what it will do, it includes or involves the wider community, so that it's not, it doesn't always separate the victim and the perpetrator, but there is some interface, there is some healing that takes place and result in, people feeling, well, at least something has been done.
Well, there is now a restorative justice bill, we gather, passed in the Parliament in December last year. Dr. Gill, how important would it be, though, for the government of Jamaica to seek to maximize the benefits under a restorative justice program?
Restorative justice is extreme, is really, when we talk about restoration, one of the questions, though, philosophical question I normally ask about restoration is, what are you restoring? Because quite often I know of families that that live in an era where they've never had a day of peace. We've taken them. I remember one family we took as a project, and this is not even Jamaica, and the persons kept on getting up in the nights and walking around because the place was too quiet. That is the level at which some people are living. And so for me, part of restoration has to be the reconstruction or the construction of communities. So there is the primary level, what we call the primary level, as in the individual restoration. But you can patch up somebody and then send them back to hell, right? So we actually need to also focus on the construction of some new communities and the reconstruction of some of our communities.
Here's a question for you, Dr. Gale, coming from Andrea White. She says, do you think that the social reintegration and infrastructure programs used successfully in countries like Brazil to address the shanty towns could be used in Jamaica to properly structure our informal settlements?
Definitely yes. Nicaragua is actually even a better example. Anywhere at all you reconstruct people's lives for better, and it is sold to them that it's better, and it is materialized as better, you will have better.
We go to the audience for questions now.
Thank you, good night. I have two questions, one for Madam Deputy DPP, one for ACP. To Madam Deputy DPP first. I know that there are legislations that provide incentives for some accused persons who would have pleaded guilty early. What impact have that had on reducing the number of cases that you have to try through the court?
There is an amendment to the Criminal Justice Administration Reform Act, and it does help, because if persons come before the court and throw in the towel and plead guilty early, not only are there compensation, but as it relates to the list, it certainly reduces the list. Particularly where the evidence is overwhelming, it's very encouraging that persons will plead guilty and benefit from an early guilty plea. So that will reduce the list. But that is just one of the many, one of the areas that we can reduce the list. But we still have a lot of matters where persons do not plead guilty, even though the evidence is overwhelming. So where we have it, it does help.
Second question?
And finally, ACP, in terms of the community policing model, certainly we've seen the success in Augustown, and before that, Cranston would have had tremendous success with that model. Is it a case that we are replicating some of these models into other communities?
Well, you mentioned Mountain, you mentioned Augustown, but I think one of the places that we have failed to even notice is Mountain View. There was a time when, for days, people couldn't get to the airport because of the level of violence in Mountain View. And Mountain View has quieted down significantly, even, I would say, more than Augustown. And nobody has noticed it. Yeah. Right? But there are many other places where that model has worked very well. Grants Bend is a case in point. Right? And it is to be it has been replicated and continues to be replicated. But I tell you this, the people will have to want it for it to work. The police, it's policing by consent. So the police will act at the consent of the citizens.
We have another question.
Hi, good night. Connolly Black. Question is for you, ACP Powell. How economically sensible is it? How economically sensible is it for us to use to be purchasing used vehicles for the fight against crime?
I don't want to really comment on that. All I will say is that the police need vehicle, and when we get vehicle, we're going to use them.
Another point has to do with the matter of a reoffending rate at 47%. Is it time to review the approach to sentencing towards more community-based sentencing, Dr. Gale?
Well, it is interesting that we have those kinds of figures, because in fact, if you take some areas, again, differential distribution, if you take some areas, you're talking about 70 and 80%. So it means, again, it goes back to literally beginning the reconstruction of some of these communities. And some of the persons, I've seen in some countries where persons get involved in misdemeanor, right? And they're actually thrown into a community frame where they have to become the positive leaders. So some amount of creativity is definitely needed. Otherwise, you know, we're gonna be trimming fat from the courts for some time.
So, some of that goes on in our justice system. Goes on a lot too, where people are given community services, where they go and help to clean up a basic school or to cut a yard for one of the government institutions. It happens. But the challenge we have is the level of violence in the society, because you can't give a violent criminal that sentence. Right.
But are you satisfied though, ACP? I mean, we're looking at the case where we have a 47% reoffending rate, and it's happening that many of these first offenses were not being recorded by the Department of Correctional Services, and as a consequence, we really, if we should look at the entire picture, it's at 47%. The problem is that the rehabilitation is not happening in the prisons.
That's right.
So those who go to serve times in the prisons are coming out as even more adept at the craft. Is it time to take more focus, a better measured approach towards greater community sentencing, or than what we have now, custodial sentencing?
I don't know that that's the answer. I think that there are people who will have to go to prison no matter what you do.
Understood.
What we want, though, is for the prisons to be places of rehabilitation. So nobody should come from prison worse than you went. And that is where I think we're having the issue. So you go to prison, the conditions there are really not nice. You are not taught a skill so that you can survive. You see, Dr. Gale said it. And part of the challenge that we have in the society is people fighting for survival. So some of these guys who come back from prison have very little to do, and so in order to survive, they go back from whence they came.
Aren't these ex-cons your biggest problems?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that ex-cons are our biggest problem. We really just have a problem of violence, and we have people who have criminal-minded. Part of the challenge, though, I humbly submit, is the fact that a lot of people depend on crime for their survival. We have to have alternatives for the people.
Thank you. We'll go back to the audience for two questions.
Sorry, just to respond first to what you said, Mr. Mitchell. The Ministry of National Security is actually working with a network of NGOs to strengthen the rehabilitation program within the correctional facilities across the island, including my organization, Fight for Peace, that's worked with them in training all the unofficial sports coordinators in how to use their sports sessions to deliver life skills in the prison. And they're doing the same thing with education providers. So my question for the ACP is, how can the police replicate that model at the community level to have more of a strengthening of the relationships between police in the communities and NGOs and CBOs that are working in the communities, so that we can have more of the prevention programs that Dr. Gale has been calling?
Well, as you know, the police youth club program goes back many, many, many years, many decades. And that continues. The police support neighborhood watch groups. We have a farmer's watch. So we have had many programs. Part of the challenge, though, is that, as I said, there must be a willingness on the part of community members.
But how do you support that ACP when you are so short with your force that a lot of the people who would have been running the communities are essentially trying to be on the front line fighting crime?
But that's the issue. I was making the point before you came in, that how we're going to resolve that issue is that the people, the pastors, the teachers, the community leaders will have to play a greater role in building the structures within the community. The police is a facilitator, but we need the community people to say, this is my community. This is what we want for our community. And this is what we're going to make happen in our community.
Let's take another question from the audience.
Hi, it's Emma Lewis. Second question, that was rather a burning one, is there's a level of moving away from murders and gang activities and so on. There's a general level of insecurity in certain parts, say, of Kingston and so on, in terms of random crime, which doesn't always get reported in the newspapers, but is sort of fueling a kind of fear, especially among, for example, women who are traveling around town on their own and so on. And there have been numerous cases quite recently of sort of attempted hijackings, that kind of thing. How can, what can we do about that except just be more careful as we move around? And what can the police do about it? They just have to be in the right place at the right time.
Well, the truth is that self-preservation is the first rule of nature. So what we have to do, we have to learn a lot about how we secure ourselves and our properties. That's very important for us to take an interest. So you don't go walking down the street at the dark of the night on your cellular phone and you laughing and talking and not paying attention to your surroundings. So that's very important. The other thing is that the police, through community policing, there has to be greater engagement of the citizens. The other thing, the problem we have with that though, you announce a meeting, you expect people to come, and a handful comes. That's part of the challenge. People have to take interest and responsibility for their own well-being, and we don't do that enough.
All right, let's pick up another question from the audience.
All right, good evening. My name is Christopher Hammond. We have several tertiary institutions on the island, and we know that criminals and the persons who are in criminal activities, one of the things that can help a community is getting them educated. Are we putting resources into these universities to assist with the fight of crime and violence?
I think that may be best for the university who is here. You're satisfied that the university is getting enough money?
Well, the problem is not at the university level. The problem is at the levels below, because one of the problems that universities are having is that they're not getting the quality and quantity of feed for them to do well. Because at the secondary and primary, there are problems, and the problems are actually gendered problems. So, but it's a powerful point to raise. If you look at the countries that have gone forward, those countries have gone forward on education and re-education. Mm-hmm. In our case, not just education, but re-educating people to feel better about themselves, to have what we call social self-esteem. All right? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but you're correct. The spotlight needs to shift towards education.
Here is a comment coming in on Facebook from Leanne Riley. She says, my father-in-law was murdered in Clarendon a couple years ago. All the neighbors ran onto the scene to take photos with contaminating the scene. Number one, it make it clear that anyone knowingly setting foot on a crime scene will be arrested, and then train police dogs to track the path of the criminal and find the murder weapon. Well, some of that. But are you having a problem with that? People...
We're having a problem with that. It has been a problem. What happened is that I don't. This is probably the only country where people hear gunshots and you run straight to the gunshot. You don't run away from it, you run straight to it. Children running towards the gunshot. I think in other places people would take a little place and hide and you watch to see what's going on. We run straight there. And so we've had problems with that, but we're working, we keep working, you know, and the truth is that our forensic people are getting much better. So, you know, we're getting better results, but we still have a problem with that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
ACP Powell and Kadeem, following up on the statement you made that, you know, we're Jamaicans are trying to survive, right? My question is, when are you and your colleagues going to stop putting, metaphorically, putting a band-aid over a wound that is severely infected? Meaning, right, I feel like we're pussyfooting around the real issue of why it is that violence is so prevalent. The fact that Jamaicans feel like, or it seems as if we don't have options, we don't have opportunities or access to these opportunities, right? Do you not realize that if it is that many people can't find a job, right? They can't feed themselves. That is why we have this dog-eat-dog situation. Why is it that we're putting around the real issues? Lack of opportunities.
I think you're reiterating my point, because I think I made that point. But I think you're addressing, that's an excellent question, but I think it's addressed at the wrong place.
Yes, yes. And in fact, we did invite the Minister of National
It's addressed
Security.
at the wrong place. My own duty is to police as best I can Jamaica.
We did invite the National Security.
In that policing, there might be opportunities, but it's not to provide opportunities.
I must say, though, ACP, that we did invite the National Security Minister and his junior and his deputy, in fact, his state minister. They were not able to be here. I'm happy that you have made that point. Go right ahead.
Good evening. I'm Akeem Dobson. I have a two-part question. First part is to ACP Powell. The second part is to both ACP Powell and Dr. Herbert A.
Let's go. We are almost out of time, so let's go.
What is the condition like in the prison system for inmates? One, that's to you directly. And the second part, what are your suggestions, both of you, for improving it in order to rehabilitate prisoners to sufficiently reintegrate in society?
ACP, can you take that in 30 seconds?
Well, the truth is I've been into most of the prisons, but I believe...
But you don't sleep there?
No. Certainly. You know, needless to say that there's still need for improvement, and I think efforts are being made, continuous effort to improve.
There are lots of programs. The Belize Central Prison under the Colby Foundation has, people can go online and look. I mean, they have a complete rehabilitation program that has been highlighted. But we also have to change the culture that says that once a person commits a crime, they have to get punished and not rehabilitation. And that is something we also have to change.
We have another question here. Yes.
Good evening. I am Romain Wallace. And ACP Powell, we made mention of an increase in the seizure of the number of guns. However, there is still an increase in the number of gun-related murders in Jamaica. What level of focus are we placing on finding the root from where these guns are stemming to our society?
All right, but we're working with international partners because guns are not made here. And so we have been working with, there have been programs, many programs with the Americans, there are programs with Haiti. The truth is that most of those are not leaving the country through the legitimate ports. And so the collaboration will have to continue so that we get better policing on that side to prevent the flow to this side.
Is it the feeling that the flow of guns into Jamaica is far outpacing the rate at which you're seizing illegal weapons?
You said far outpaced, so I don't have that evidence. But what I can say, there is a continuous flow into Jamaica.
Much more or much faster?
No, the quantity, I don't know that we're in a position to say.
There's nothing anecdotal to suggest?
No, because the truth is that in some areas we're seeing a reduction in gun violence, whilst in other areas we're seeing an increase.
Another question from a member of the audience. Well, this is Jason Cross from the Gleaner.
Yes, Mr. Powell, this question is for you, right? How much is the police appealing to the government to get the social interventions, the social intervention programs going? Because
yes, ACP.
Well, that has been a big part of our policing plan. And so I think everybody in authority knows that this is important. It's an imperative if we're going to contain the crime monster.
What is the feedback you get from the government when you have the conversation?
Pardon me? I think government understand that too. And I think that the efforts have been made by all governments to do better. The truth is that there is significant resource constraint.
Well, we're almost entirely out of time, but I must allow you, ACP, before we close, to provide us with, I beg your pardon, to provide us with those stats you brought here in respect of the latest on murders. We're no longer getting them as frequently as we used to. Not as frequently as we used to. So what's the latest?
All right. Well, up to today, we had 367 murders compared to 305 last year. St. James, and I mean, we're talking about the equivalent period. St. James has 66 compared to 54. Westmoreland has 42 compared to 27. St. Catherine North, which is Spanish Town and the other areas, 39 compared to 27. And Hanover, which has the biggest increase, has 26 compared to 5 last year. Last year this time they had 5. They have 26 now.
Well, that's a somber note on which to bring this program to an end. This has been Light on Violence, a special Gleaner forum on crime. Thanks to our panelists, ACP Elan Powell, in charge of the crime portfolio, Maxine Jackson, Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, and Dr. Herbert Gale, an anthropologist and a lecturer at the University of the West Indies. I'm Damian Mitchell, saying thanks to the entire production team for making this happen, and of course to our partners. Good evening.
This is Crime Stop. How may I help?
You know them bury some illegal gun, but me not want them know say I'm me talk.
Don't worry, sir. Crime Stop is privately funded and run by the PSOJ. Everything reported here is anonymous. It's just like you're invisible.
What about the reward?
We provide cash rewards for information that leads to an arrest or recovery. We'll stash the cash wherever you like, so nobody will ever find out.
All right, me tell you.
Be an invisible hero. Make the call. Crime Stop 311. Solving crime pays.
Wherever in the world we are, Jamaica is with us. In our hearts, in the way we talk, in the way we walk. In the Gleaner. Access Jamaican news anytime, anywhere, on your smartphone, tablet, or computer. Stay on top of what I want by reading today. Stay informed with your #1 Jamaican news source, The Gleaner. Become a digital subscriber today at www.jamaica-gleaner.com. Anytime, anywhere.
Action. Free up your life, free up your life. Get flow alive. Rhythm don't stop, we a vibe it up. Music nice for me, I fi turn it up. Get these a data free. These a data free. But boy, that's not all. $2.99 per minute for your call. In a house, in a car, anywhere you're there at all. Free up your life, free up your life. Get flow alive. Free up your life, free up your life. Get flow alive.
We had a perfect love story, but everything changed. We start getting angry for the simplest things. I knew it wasn't healthy, but I loved him. It's only when I ended up in the hospital I realized that I had to make a choice. Him or me. I choose me. I called the police and they helped me.
If you're a victim of domestic abuse, get help. Call your nearest police station. A message from the Ministry of National Security.
It all starts with a choice, a reaction. Maybe it was something small that blew up. But don't you see? There's power in you. Power to control the things you do. You have the power to create a better tomorrow. But it starts with the choices you make today. What will you choose? Walk away. It's not worth it. Make the right choices today. Let's create a safer Jamaica.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
I swore I'd never hit a woman. That's my father's thing, and I wasn't going to be anything like him. But then I'd get so angry. I never ever meant to hurt her.
I never knew how to stand up for myself or deal with his anger, so we got trapped in the cycle. So I spoke with a counselor, and he stepped in, and he helped us both to work on our personal issues. And now, we're working to repair our relationship.
If you're a victim of domestic abuse, get help. A message from the Ministry of National Security.
Action. Free up your life, free up your life. Get flow alive. Your links one shot, get free talk data on your WhatsApp. Vibes up me one shot. Free up your life, get flow alive from your app that lock. No need for hotspot, boy. That's not all. $2.99 per minute for your call. In a house, in a car, anywhere you're there at all. Free up your life, free up your life. Get flow alive. Free up your life, free up your life. Get flow alive.
I had no clue I was being abusive. That the things I would say hurt him so much. I wasn't hitting him or anything, but my words were just as hurtful.
It got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. I was fed up, and I came this close to lashing out at her. I decided then it had to stop.
We've been seeing a professional counselor for almost 6 months now, and our relationship has been much better.
If you're a victim of domestic abuse, you too can get help. A message from the Ministry of National Security.